On a snow-swept street, a 7-year-old girl wanders barefoot, abandoned and terrified, leaving tiny footprints in the icy night. Her world has grown cold, dark, and silent, until a wealthy stranger intervenes. With compassion and decisive action, he becomes her lifeline, offering warmth, safety, and hope. This story traces a journey from despair to resilience, showing how one act of kindness can change a life forever and restore belief in humanity. The night was merciless. Snow lashed across the deserted streets, carried by a bitter wind that cut through even the thickest coats. The only sound was the crunch of fragile footprints. A child, no older than 7, moving cautiously, almost ghost-like, through the frozen silence. Her bare feet sank into the white powder, leaving tiny, trembling impressions behind. Each step was agony, but still she pressed forward, small arms wrapped around herself, trying to shield her shivering body from the unforgiving cold. The girl's hair clung in damp tangles to her pale face, frozen tears streaking her cheeks like brittle icicles. Her backpack, worn and torn, sagged lifelessly from her shoulders, nothing but a shadow of a burden she once thought carried her safety. She whispered into the icy air, her tiny voice barely audible over the wind. "Help, someone, please." The echoes returned empty, unbroken. There was no one, only the snow, only the dark, only fear. In the distance, a faint glow appeared, growing brighter until it cut through the blizzard, a sleek black car slowing to a stop. The headlights illuminated her shivering form, and she froze, hope flickering uncertainly behind fear. The door opened. Out stepped a man, tall and well-dressed, his polished shoes crunching against the snow. His skin was dark, his eyes alert, scanning the street with a mixture of concern and urgency. He was a millionaire, accustomed to controlling boardrooms and bending the world to his will, but none of that mattered now. His focus was singular, the child before him. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently, kneeling to her level. His coat swept around her like a protective shield. The warmth was foreign, startling her senses. Her wide, icy blue eyes flickered from caution to wonder. I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered, voice trembling. Without hesitation, he lifted her into the warmth of his car. She clung to his coat, tiny hands gripping fabric as if it were the only tether to safety she had ever known. The heater's warmth seeped into her bones, but it wasn't just the temperature. She could feel for the first time in hours that she mattered. Her sobs subsided into shaky breaths, and the silence of the streets outside became a distant memory. He listened patiently as she recounted the hours, and the days, of cold, hunger, and abandonment. The story pierced him deeply, each detail sharper than the last. And yet, his voice remained calm, even soothing, as he asked questions, learned her name, and promised he would keep her safe. By the time they reached his home, a modest mansion hidden behind high walls and trees dusted with snow, the child was exhausted but oddly comforted. The doors opened to warmth, to soft light, to blankets and meals and safety. She had never known anything like this, a stark contrast to the frozen streets she had wandered moments before. As she wrapped herself in a soft blanket, the millionaire knelt beside her once more. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said. There was no sermon, no lecture, only reassurance. Trust being rebuilt piece by fragile piece. Just as she closed her eyes to rest, a soft knock echoed from the door. Another presence had come into her life, and with it, the tension of the unknown returned. Who could it be? Friend or a threat? "I worked so hard crafting this story for you, so if you believe kindness can still change lives, please subscribe, it means the world to me." The warmth of the millionaire's home was a strange, fragile comfort. The fire crackled softly, sending golden light across the room, painting the walls with shadows that seemed alive. The child sat wrapped in a thick blanket, knees drawn to her chest, still trembling, not from the cold anymore, but from the weight of everything she had endured. Her wide eyes darted nervously at every sound, every movement, as if expecting the cold streets and their cruel emptiness to return at any moment. The millionaire, whose name was Marcus, knelt before her, gently brushing a lock of tangled hair from her face. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I promise, no one will hurt you here." But even as he spoke, a knot of anxiety tightened in his chest. How could he ensure this child's safety when the world outside was so cold and merciless? Her story, when it unfolded, was like shards of glass cutting into his heart. She spoke haltingly at first, each word a tremor of fear. Her parents, if they could even be called that, had left her alone, first for hours, then for days. There was no food, no warmth, no comfort, only the snow, only hunger, only the fear of being forgotten. I thought I'd never see anyone again," she said, voice cracking. She buried her face in the blanket, and Marcus's heart ached. Yet, even in the safety of the mansion, shadows of the past lingered. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, reminded her of abandonment. She flinched at the slightest sound, her trust fragile, built on a thread of hope that might snap at any moment. Marcus understood that simply rescuing her from the snow would never be enough. Healing would take time, patience, and care. He contacted social services discreetly, arranging for temporary guardianship and professional support. But as the hours turned into days, Marcus began to see the deep scars that no system could immediately mend. At night, he would hear her soft cries from the guest room, hear the memories of being left alone whispered between sobs. He sat outside the door, listening, wishing he could absorb the pain for her. Conflict began to mount when Marcus learned more about her parents. Their neglect wasn't just a momentary lapse, it was systemic, tangled in debts, addiction, and selfishness. They had abandoned her once, and without intervention, would abandon her again. The thought made Marcus's jaw tighten. The child's innocence had been stolen, and the world had failed her. At school, once she was enrolled under Marcus's guidance, new challenges emerged. Other children, noticing her small stature, pale cheeks, and timid mannerisms, whispered and pointed. Teachers tried to help, but her mistrust of adults was fierce. She flinched when a hand reached out to guide her, recoiled at sudden movements, and slept fitfully, haunted by nightmares of snow and empty streets. Marcus watched helplessly, knowing that even though he had provided warmth and safety, the trauma still clung to her like frost on the windows. There were moments when she refused to eat, moments when she hid in corners, moments when she asked, "Why did everyone leave me?" Each question was a jagged blade through Marcus's chest. He wanted to answer, to erase her pain, but he couldn't. What he could do was stay, remain a constant, unwavering presence in her life, a symbol that not everyone would leave, that trust could be rebuilt. Even Marcus faced his own internal battle. His busy life of board meetings, investments, and luxury felt suddenly trivial compared to the fragile, living presence before him. He wrestled with guilt over all the children he hadn't noticed in the world, with anger at a system that allowed this to happen. And yet, he could do something now, here, with her. That thought alone drove him to keep pushing, to keep offering warmth where the world had been cold. Then came a subtle but piercing reminder of the stakes. One evening, a call came from the child's biological mother. Her voice was brittle, desperate, and unapologetic. She demanded to see her daughter, claiming she just wanted to make sure she was okay. Marcus's heart pounded. He knew this could destabilize the fragile trust they had begun to build. The mother's intentions were unclear. Was it guilt, manipulation, or selfishness masked as care? Marcus had to act carefully, balancing legal obligations with the child's fragile emotional state. That night, the child whispered from the guest room, "What if they take me away? What if I'm left alone again?" Her voice trembled, tiny hands clutching the blanket as if it could shield her from the world. Marcus sat by the bed, holding her hand, feeling the weight of the responsibility pressing down like snow. He didn't have all the answers, but he had one certainty. He would not allow her to be abandoned again, not while he could prevent it. The tension escalated when the mother arrived. She was dressed neatly, her hair pulled back, lips pressed tight in feigned concern. The child froze at the sight of her, fear etched deep in her young features. Marcus intervened calmly but firmly, explaining the legal procedures, the child's needs, and her recent trauma. His voice was calm, yet underneath it burned a fire, a refusal to let the child slip back into a world of neglect. The mother's eyes narrowed, but she agreed, reluctantly, to meet the child under supervision. That moment became a crucible, a test of the child's courage and Marcus's resolve. The child, small but brave, held Marcus's hand as they approached the room where the meeting would take place. Her pulse raced, and so did his. One wrong word, one gesture, and the delicate bond of trust they had built could shatter. As the mother reached toward the child, her hand trembling, the girl pulled back instinctively, refusing, resisting. Marcus felt his heart seize. What would she do next? Would she retreat entirely into fear, or would she find the courage to stand up and speak for herself? The days following the mother's visit were heavy with tension. The child stayed close to Marcus, her trust fragile, her small body curled protectively under blankets that were still too large, too warm, too strange. Night after night, the shadows of her past crept into her dreams, the snow, the loneliness, the cold streets, and she would wake in terror, calling softly for someone who had once abandoned her. But now, Marcus was there, always there. One chilly morning, as pale sunlight filtered through the curtains, Marcus decided it was time for a bold step. He could not let fear dictate the child's life any longer. They would face the past together, confront it, and reclaim the power that had been stolen. He prepared documents, legal counsel, and a detailed plan for guardianship, ensuring that every precaution was taken to secure her future. But he also knew that paperwork alone would not heal her soul. For that, he needed her courage, and she needed to see that people could choose to care. He took her to the city's bustle and park, a place alive with movement, laughter, and the faint smell of roasted nuts from street vendors. The child's eyes widened, unsure how to process joy after months of fear and neglect. She hesitated at first, lingering behind Marcus as he knelt beside her. "It's safe here," he whispered. "You can take a breath. You don't have to be afraid." Slowly, she stepped forward, each tiny footfall a tentative declaration that she was still willing to engage with the world. At the park, a small act of kindness became the catalyst for a monumental shift. A young boy tripped on the icy path and scraped his knee. The child froze, her instincts screaming with fear and caution. But then, almost reflexively, she stepped forward. She reached out, offering a warm handkerchief and a soft, "It's okay, you'll be fine." Marcus watched, heart swelling, as she comforted the boy. This simple act, a gesture that once would have been unimaginable, was the first spark of her reclaiming her own sense of agency. Back home, Marcus observed these small victories with quiet satisfaction. He introduced routines, meals together, laughter woven into mundane tasks, washing dishes, folding laundry, brushing hair. Every small moment became a building block of trust and healing. The child's laughter, initially brittle and hesitant, began to resonate with a warmth that had been missing for months. She learned that safety was not just a physical condition, but an emotional state that could exist when someone truly cared. The mother, however, remained a looming shadow. She called intermittently, her tone oscillating between guilt and indignation, demanding updates and occasionally insinuating threats. Each call tested the child's resilience, each voice from the past attempting to pull her back into fear. Marcus remained a steady anchor. He explained each call calmly, giving her choices, allowing her to assert her own voice. Slowly, she began to understand that she could influence her own story, that she was not merely a passive observer of her own life. Then came a revelation that would change everything. While sorting through old belongings left behind by the child's parents, Marcus found a small, tattered journal. Inside, the child had written, between broken sentences and smudged lines of ink, about her fears, her loneliness, and her fleeting moments of hope. Reading her words, Marcus felt a profound connection to her inner world, a glimpse into the strength she had already been carrying despite her suffering. He knew then that she was not just a victim, she was a survivor. Inspired, Marcus created a plan to empower her further. He enrolled her in art classes, encouraged storytelling, and allowed her to document her own journey through drawings and words. Slowly, the child's confidence blossomed. She began speaking in full sentences, smiling without fear, and even initiating small acts of kindness toward others. Each brushstroke on a canvas, each line of a story, became a testament to her resilience. One evening, Marcus noticed something extraordinary. The child had arranged her toys in a meticulous pattern, creating a small world of her own design. In that tiny universe, there were figures helping one another, shielding each other from harm, offering warmth and comfort. It was a reflection of the life Marcus had been trying to cultivate, a safe space where trust and care were central. He knelt beside her, awe in his eyes. "You've created something amazing," he said. "This is your world, and here, you are always safe." The real turning point came unexpectedly. While walking through a local market, the child noticed an elderly woman struggling with heavy bags. Without hesitation, she ran forward to help, her small hands steady and determined. Marcus followed, smiling quietly. Witnessing this act of empathy, an echo of the kindness she had received, confirmed something powerful. She had internalized the lesson of compassion, and the cycle of care was beginning anew. Yet, the past was not finished with them. One morning, the mother appeared unannounced, standing at the gate with a thin smile that did not reach her eyes. Marcus's heart raced, not with fear, but with determination. He guided the child to safety inside the house, and calmly confronted the mother with legal paperwork, documentation of the child's well-being, and evidence of neglect. The mother's composure faltered, her words stumbling, and for the first time, she could not manipulate the situation. Just as Marcus prepared to firmly close the chapter with the mother, she dropped a startling statement. She wanted custody back, and she claimed to have changed. The room froze. Could the child's hard-won sense of security withstand this sudden threat? Or would the past return to shatter their fragile world? Do you think things will finally change for them now, or will it all fall apart again? Let me know below. The courtroom was silent except for the soft shuffle of papers and the occasional cough, but the tension in the air was palpable. Marcus held the child's hand tightly as they walked in, her small frame trembling, but her gaze fixed forward. Today was the culmination of weeks of preparation, of legal battles, and of emotional labor. Everything now would determine whether the life she had just begun to trust could continue. The mother stood across the room, composed on the surface but with a flicker of unease in her eyes. She claimed she had changed, that she could provide a better life, but Marcus had gathered every detail of her past neglect, her absence, and the emotional trauma inflicted on the child. The judge reviewed the file silently, occasionally glancing up at the child, whose blue eyes reflected both fear and courage. Marcus spoke first, his voice calm but resolute. "Your Honor, this child has endured abandonment and neglect beyond what any child should face. She has found safety, warmth, and love here. To return her to the care of someone who has repeatedly left her alone would be a grave mistake." The mother's response was calculated, trying to appeal to emotion. "I've changed. I've realized my mistakes. I want my child back. I can provide a home for her." But her words fell flat. The judge, seasoned and impartial, asked pointed questions about past neglect, about the child's emotional needs, and about the consistency of care she had received under Marcus's guardianship. The child, small but determined, was asked if she wished to speak. She looked at Marcus, drew in a trembling breath, and then found her voice. I don't want to go back. I was alone. I was scared. I don't want to be left alone again." Her words, though quiet, resonated through the courtroom, cutting through the tension like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The mother's face fell, a mixture of anger and defeat. Marcus squeezed the child's hand gently, whispering reassurance, as the judge nodded solemnly. "The court finds that it is in the best interest of the child to remain in the care of Mr. Marcus," the judge declared. Relief washed over the room like a wave. The child's shoulders relaxed, tears streaming freely, but this time from safety, not fear. Outside the courtroom, Marcus lifted the child into a warm embrace. The snow from her past life, the cold, the fear, the abandonment, felt like a distant memory now. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing softly, and for the first time truly felt that she was protected. The world, once cruel and indifferent, had shifted. There was love, there was warmth, and there was hope. Over the following days, the child's world transformed. She returned home to routines of stability, school, meals, art classes, laughter echoing through rooms that once felt alien and intimidating. She began to trust herself, and the world around her, in ways that had seemed impossible just weeks before. Marcus remained her anchor, guiding her gently, celebrating small victories, and providing the consistency she needed to thrive. The neighborhood, once a silent witness to her abandonment, now seemed alive with possibility. Children waved as she walked to school, neighbors offered smiles and greetings, and even the harsh winter air felt softened by a newfound sense of security. She carried with her the memory of snow and ice, but now it was a reminder of how far she had come, not of what she had endured. One evening, Marcus and the child sat by the fireplace, a soft glow illuminating her hair, now brushed and untangled. "Do you remember the first night you came here?" Marcus asked gently. She nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I was so scared," she admitted. "But you didn't let me go." "That's right," Marcus replied. "And I never will. You're never alone again." The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth in her heart, a perfect reflection of the emotional journey she had undertaken, from despair to trust, from abandonment to belonging. Even the mother, though no longer a part of the child's daily life, became a footnote in this story of transformation, a reminder that the past can inform the present, but it does not have to define the future. Marcus had not only rescued a child from the snow, he had rescued her from a lifetime of fear and hopelessness. That night, the child placed a small snow globe on her bedside table. Inside, a miniature snowy street reflected her memories, but in it, she saw herself walking confidently, warm and safe, with Marcus by her side. She whispered softly, "This is my world now." Outside, the real snow began to fall lightly, but this time it carried no fear, only the quiet promise of a new beginning. The days that followed the courtroom victory were filled with quiet, profound change. The child no longer flinched at sudden noises, no longer woke in terror from dreams of snow and abandonment. Her small room, once stark and unfamiliar, now glowed with warmth, soft blankets, colorful drawings on the walls, and a carefully arranged bookshelf filled with stories she could lose herself in. Every corner spoke of safety, every object a reminder that she belonged, that she was cared for, and that she was no longer alone. Marcus remained a steady presence, not only as guardian but as mentor, friend, and protector. He celebrated each small triumph, her first day back at school where she laughed with classmates, the first meal she finished without hesitation, the first drawing she created entirely on her own. He learned that true rescue was not just removing a child from danger, it was nurturing resilience, restoring faith, and teaching that trust could exist again, even after the deepest betrayal. The child herself began to transform in ways that astonished even Marcus. She grew confident in her own voice, speaking clearly and asserting her needs. She offered kindness to others in simple, authentic ways, sharing her art with classmates, helping neighbors carry groceries, comforting friends in distress. Each act of compassion reflected the lessons she had absorbed, the warmth she had received, and the emotional safety she now carried within her heart. Winter eventually gave way to spring, and the snow that had once been a symbol of fear and abandonment now became a reminder of survival and hope. One morning, she placed a small snow globe on her bedside table, the same one she had stared at during her first nights in Marcus's home. But now, instead of reflecting loneliness, it reflected a miniature world filled with warmth and care, a symbolic landscape where she walked confidently, safe in the knowledge that she would never be left behind again. Marcus watched her from the doorway, a quiet smile on his face. He understood that their journey together had changed them both. He had rescued a child from physical danger, but she had rescued something within him too, the reminder that compassion, empathy, and courage could transform lives in ways no wealth or power could. The mother's presence faded completely, her attempts to reclaim control no longer threatening the child's peace. She remained a shadow of the past, a lesson in the fragility of trust and the consequences of neglect, but she no longer held any power over their lives. The child had reclaimed her story, and Marcus had ensured that no one could erase the hope they had rebuilt together. The child's laughter now filled rooms once dominated by silence and fear. Even the simplest moments, pouring cereal, walking to school, curling up with a book, became victories, celebrations of her resilience. The snow outside occasionally reminded her of what she had endured, but it also reminded her of the human capacity for kindness. The world could be cruel, yes, but it could also be tender, protective, and life-saving, just as Marcus had proven. One evening, as they sat together by the fireplace, the child looked up at Marcus with clear eyes, free of fear. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Marcus held her close. "No, thank you," he said softly, "for letting me be part of your story, for trusting that the world can still be good." This story, at its core, was not just about rescue, it was about resilience, about the enduring power of compassion, and about the transformative impact of a single act of kindness. One night, a child abandoned and forgotten had found warmth, safety, and trust. One man's refusal to turn away had rewritten her life, proving that even in a world filled with neglect, hope could bloom, and hearts could heal. The snow that had once symbolized despair now carried a quiet promise. The child, once a figure of vulnerability, had become a symbol of strength, and Marcus, once a man bound by wealth and obligation, had become a guardian, mentor, and witness to the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Life can be harsh, and people may fail us, but the world is still full of those willing to step forward, to care, and to transform despair into hope. One act of courage, one act of kindness, can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Every small act matters. It could be the difference between despair and hope, between fear and safety, between being alone and being loved.